Also, I was very curious the other day. I was just thinking in my room that what was the religion of the Prophet before Islam came, and before he was like, the 40-year-old time that when he wasn't, the Prophet. So, what did the Prophet believe in? So, whenever I asked people that, they said that he believed in a monotheist God and all of that, and his parents believed in a monotheist God, and that does not make sense. So, was Prophet an idol worshiper before Islam came, or was he a monotheist? So, do we have any sort of reliable source of what the Prophet used to believe in before he became a prophet?
Yeah, I can tell you what he was, because now we again have to, if we want to believe what is written in history, like Sira or the Tarikh Tabri or Tabqat ibn Saad or Tabqat Kabir, if we want to believe what is written there, and I think there is some truth to that, maybe. So one thing we know, that Muhammad was born to Arab pagans. If we want to take their history literally, we know that he was most probably born to pagans. But we have more than enough reason, according to Islamic history and according to archaeology as well, to believe that he converted to Christianity. Why? So, first of all, he was marrying a Christian, and that Christian woman was basically the dominant, member of this relationship. And a pagan cannot be taken to a Christian priest or a Christian, what you would say, saint like Workov and Nofel, or a Christian, no, what you would say, holy man for the answers. If Muhammad was going to him, then this means he was a Christian. Secondly, the other evidence comes from this prayer in seclusion in Gare Hira, or the Hira cave, because these kind of caves are found all over the area of Levant, Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Israel, and the Sinai Desert. These caves are found all over the this area, and they were used for prayer by the Christians. So Jews do not do this, but the Christians do. So I think Muhammad belonged to some Gnostic sect of Christianity for a little while, and then later on he came up with his own religion, and this is what happened. This is what I believe. I wouldn't say that you have to agree with that, or this is the final word. Maybe one day we are going to learn more about it. We are going to have evidence about it, and we are going to know that what was the earlier life of Muhammad like. Because most of his earlier biographies have even been destroyed, like the one written by Vakati and some other people. They have been destroyed. So we don't know what went on. Basically, I believe he was a Christian for some time, and later he came up with his own religion.
Also, I just wanted to say about, we were talking about compilation earlier, and I just wanted to say that the all of the compilation of hadith, it is done after 150 years of Prophet's death, and the most authentic Sahih Bukhari and everyone, they
Not
started
150, not 150.
more than that,
Sahih
more than
Bukhari comes 256 years after him.
yeah, sorry, my mistake, more than that. So
Yeah.
why does 1.5 billion people make the hadith a fundamental tenet of Islam and say that we're going to make laws out of hadith, we're going to put Sharia through the lens of hadith? Why? Because after 256 years of oral tradition means that there are a lot of hadiths, even if they have their sanad, even if they have their matan, even if there's a chain of narrators, there's still a problem with authentication. Because if there's a game called Chinese Whisper, and once people orally narrate things,
Yeah,
the
definitely,
meaning gets
definitely. We
changed.
know, we know that
So
how
why
Chinese
do
whisper works.
why don't the 1.5 billion Muslims realize that these has very big authentication problems, and so does the Quran, because all the religion is based on the two different things. Why don't people realize that, okay, there are some authenticity doubts that we have? Isn't just this rational thinking? If I can come up with this on my own, why can't 1.5 billion people?
Because they don't know. They don't know. Mullahs never tell Muslims what are the problems in Islam.
Well,
Muslims
it's
are
not just
basically the least aware of any other. If we compare people of all religions, Muslims are the least aware when it comes to knowing the problems in their religion. They don't know. Maybe
No, it's
Christians
not.
are the best, most aware. They know what problems exist in their religion. I don't know which other religion comes after that, but Muslims are the least aware.
No, but I don't think it's a job the mullahs. I think so. Quran itself says that you have to read, and it emphasizes
Yeah,
on
but
reading.
hadith is something that they cannot survive without. Islam would not be a religion without hadith, because Quran is such a vague book. You wouldn't be able to. You give a layman who has never read, who does not know about Islam, and you give them the Quran. That person would be just that person would be confused as hell, because he wouldn't know anything what this book is talking about. So, and imagine these early Muslims who did not had any kind of hadith books, and they did not even had the Sira books, and there was a lot of jumbled up traditions going on, maybe, and these guys were totally confused. And let's say for the first 100 years, the number of these sayings of prophets or hadiths going on would be less. But imagine the next 100 years, because people would be adding up to the fake hadiths all the time. And by the next 200 years, it would be all hell would break loose. And the kind of confusion that would be in the Muslim world, today you and I cannot even imagine that. Because they say that Bukhari gathered 600,000 hadith. Can you imagine? Like 600,000 hadiths he did. And out of those, he only chose 5,700. That's it. Not even 0.5% of those was chosen as authentic. And
That
even,
means I just want to add to that point. I'm very sorry for intruding. That means he did that for 1643 years. If he chose
yeah,
one
yeah,
of
yeah.
these
Yeah,
hadiths.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's how bad it was. And without the hadith and the Sira, it does not make sense at all. So I think the best book that would explain Islam would be Sira of Ibn Hisham. I think that should have been the only auxiliary book of Islam. There shouldn't have been any hadith or any tariq or anything else. Tariq should have been there, but the Sira should have had the final authority. And I think at some point it was written with that view in mind. But the later emperors did not agree with that, the later rulers. And they asked the authors to make new history and make Islam according to their will more and more. I think Quran was finalized by the end of the first century, Islamic century. But Hadith and the Sira, they were very much up for grabs. And Muslims were very slow, because in those years they were just busy in aggressive expansion, and the scholarly things were not there at all. So when the Abbasids came into power, they realized this literary vacuum that existed in the Islamic world. And then they realized, okay, Christians know about Jesus, Jews know about Moses, the followers of Mani know about their religion, the followers of Zoroaster know about their religion and their holy personality, but we don't know anything about our religion. So then the Abbasids told them to start writing these books, and they wrote them. So this is how it is. Basically, Islam is basically one big Abbasid conspiracy. All this history and everything. It's basically one big conspiracy.
Also, I'm talking about all these things as a Muslim because I'm in the process of reading and learning and try to critically think about things. We have to constructively criticize and think about Islam and its contents. I just want to say about heaven and the concept of heaven. What do we do once we go to the heaven? Are we living in heaven forever? What's the purpose of heaven? It's very hard to understand that because in Quran there's a lot of gruesome details about hell and how hell is going to be like. But when it comes to heaven, there are no details about what the women are going to do in heaven, and it's only about male orgy and all of those things. Like there's going to be wine and there's going to be women. So why I cannot understand what would be the fundamental objective of being in heaven. So it just doesn't make sense to me because I don't want to live in a heaven for a trillion years because I'd be pretty bored. living in such a heaven. So
If you ask
that
me, if you ask my opinion about it, basically the purpose of hell is to, purpose of heaven is to waste your time. That's all. That's what I see there, because there's you are doing nothing. You're just sitting around. You're not even watching Netflix there. You're just sitting around. You are doing nothing. It's
no,
sex and then eat and sleep. Maybe sleep is even not there. It's sex and eat, and you are not even going to the toilet. You're not even shitting there. You're just eating and having sex and then eating and then having sex and maybe going to the bazaar in the Jannah, and that's all. Nothing else. Nothing
no,
at all.
but but reproduction and consuming food is related to humans able to pass their genes to and make sure that the survival machine of human makes replicates its DNA and its genes. So what is the purpose of having intercourse? Because intercourse is a byproduct of reproduction, because that is why we do intercourse, and that is why we are evolutionary. From an evolutionary perspective, that's why we take pleasure from having intercourse, because our DNA and our genes want us to feel good when we are replicating our genes, and when we're doing the act of reproduction. So what's the point of having intercourse? Because the whole point of intercourse is to make sure that there's reproduction. So it's just futile that you're having intercourse. Don't you think
I
that?
think I think basically the kind of heaven that we are talking about here makes you a brain dead zombie. That's all. Because sex is basically a very, very small portion of life. Sex is basically a very small portion of life. Sex for the sake of sex is not pleasurable at all. Because sex for the sake of sex is basically going to a prostitute. And the pleasure is still the point of climax, because as soon as a person who is reaches climax, then he knows that okay, he has uh, maybe he enjoyed, but he knows that he has lost some money, he has lost some time, maybe he's going to get some STD as well, because when you have an erection, that till that time you're not thinking about it, but as soon as you reach the climax, then you get into this point of clarity where you know that what are the risks involved in it.
Also, I was
People would do
confused.
stupid things. People would do stupid things when they have a sexual arousal. Young people will just climb the wall and go to the girl next door, and they can be even killed for this, but they do that. And as soon as they reach climax, then they realize, okay, what kind of risk they have taken, and they would promise themselves, okay, we would not do it ever again. But after a few hours, when they would have the same problem again, and they would go and solve it in the same way. So basically, Islam is trying to capitalize over this stupid urge of having sex. That's all. It's capitalizing on that.
Also,
There's nothing more to it.
I asked a few people about whether the Quran is it literal, or is it just telling us stories about how about moral lessons. So with the Jonah and the whale, so I was confused that if you ask any scientist, a person cannot live in the stomach of a whale, and it's pretty difficult to do that. So is this a literal story? I'm talking from a prism of about how are you trying to talk sense into a very rational scientific Muslim, and how does he think that Jonah can survive in a whale's stomach? Because I don't think that that's scientifically possible.
That is not scientifically possible at all, and that's a lie. That's all. So you want to take Quran literally or not? I think any book that was written in that time was always literal. Even if it was talking about mythology, people believed that it was literal. Maybe for people like us today who know what a symbol means, I think 99.9% of the people living at that time wouldn't understand meaning of a symbol. They wouldn't understand mythology or any kind of other kind of cryptic messages in that. No, they wouldn't. So when we say that literal translation of Quran or Bible or Arda Viraf or any other book, Basically, that's all stupid, because when these books were written, most of the people did not even understand the meaning of iconography or symbology, symbolism, or these kinds of things. So the question in itself basically self destructs when you put it into the historical context, because the people were much less educated. Nearly everyone was illiterate at that time. Most of them were just listening to what was being read to them in the mosques or the churches or other places of worship. This is what was there. So if these people think, whenever I come across this question, because whenever we are talking to Muslims or people of any other religion, basically we are talking to them on the frequency that they can relate to. But if you ask me that what is the meaning of literal translation or the symbolic translation or the translation with the deeper meaning, basically that's all stupid. There is just literal translation. And if you want to translate Quran, you cannot translate it according to the Arabic of today. You would have to go back 1450 years, and you would have to understand what a certain word meant at that time, and you would have to translate it according to that grammar and that language. The meaning would be what was the meaning for Muhammad or the people of his time. Today, Zakir Naik would translate Baza as an ostrich's egg. But that was not the meaning that Muhammad or his companions or anyone else basically got from that verse. So basically, Zakir Naik is not only changing Quran, Zakir Naik is basically the worst kind of Muslim that can exist there, because he's changing Quran. He's changing Quran. No one else is changing. Non-Muslims are not changing Quran. It's the Muslims who are changing Quran. Because this is basically a change in Quran. How would you change Quran? You would change the meaning, because you wouldn't be able to change the words themselves, but you would only change the meaning. So this is what they're doing right now. So
Also,
translation or this kind of translation or that kind of translation, that's all bullshit. There's only just one kind of translation, and that would be the most accurate kind of translation. That would be translating it according to the understanding of the words that were 1450 years ago. That's it.
also about the ascension of Prophet to the Miraj. And I was just having, scientific problems in understanding that the Prophet uh, went on a unicorn, and he went to Palestine, and the 124,000 prophets who actually died, they came out of their graves to pray behind him, and then he went to the outer space into heaven. So how did he breathe? How did those dead people become alive? Isn't these things fundamentally, we should question them on the basis of facts and science rather than belief, because that's what Islam teaches. Islam teaches critical thinking. But isn't this self contradictory to Islam, that you're not questioning these beliefs through the lens of science, rather through the lens of dogmatic beliefs? So that is quite self-contradictory, and I see it.
That is self contradictory, but mostly Muslims don't want to see it from that end. Okay, Arif, thank you. I'll move on. There are other people here as well. Okay, it was nice talking to you.